Let's talk about your athleticism. Like, how did you even get into volleyball?
Volleyball was something I had to earn. I think I really respected myself more because you couldn't fake it, right? Like you really had to put the time in. So I really thrived in that environment because it felt really pure to me.
What was the transition then between volleyball and modeling?
I was a junior in high school, and my mother, of all things, put me into a finishing school.
Oh,
And
my God.
I was an unusual looking kid. They instantly put me in touch with a scout/manager. I can remember going to see a woman named Preston, who was the model booker for American Vogue. And she was like, oh yeah, no. Like, you're way too big for us. Like, but I know someone who's gonna like you. And she sent me to Stephen Meisel. And he booked me for, 8 pages of Italian Vogue on the spot. And then I went on from there. And then I got a Nike deal and on and on. So I sort of transitioned and brought everything together.
You're living this dream life. You're shooting with every photographer for every magazine. You were at the top of what you were doing. How did you decide to move along?
Well, a couple things. First of all,
Ladies and gentlemen, we have as our very first guest on Style Your Vibe, the one, the only, my idol. Don't get cringy and don't freak out, Gabby, because I've never said that before. So it's Gabby Reece. Gabby Reece is a former professional volleyball player. She was a supermodel. She is still a model. She is the host of the Gabby Reece Show podcast, one of my very favorites, if not my favorite podcast. She has a business with her husband, Laird Superfood. They also run XPT, which is a peak performance training program, and there's probably a million others. Gabby, welcome. Did I miss anything?
no, thank you.
Okay, we'll find something. I wanted to say that the reason Gabby is my very first guest, which I won't do on other shows, is because I have been thinking about doing this for, I've been thinking of doing something since about 2015. And then when podcast came, I thought I would want to do something, but I was too scared. There's many mindset issues there. And Gabby was really the one. She was on High Vibe Live. And then when I asked her for some advice, she said, how about a Zoom call? She's stayed with me for an hour and a half, and she's been a really huge cheerleader. So, Gabby, thank you so much for that. And thank you for being on this show basically twice.
Listen, it's my honor. Anytime, somebody wants to visit with you and, you're a very passionate, energetic person, and I appreciate that. And, someone who takes what they do very serious. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad to see you pulling the trigger again.
I know. I think on your last text, you said, like, I can't wait to see something like you in the world or be yourself in the world. Anyways, and maybe I'll do something on that later. But anyways, Gabby, thank you so much. You're extremely busy, and so I do appreciate this. We have done an interview before, and this is a little bit like that, but obviously a bit different. Could you start off by kind of talking a little bit about your background insofar as how it relates to sort of who you are today and everything that you've been through? Meaning, like, a couple touch points here and there. This isn't a historical novel people can read on Wikipedia, but a little bit about maybe, your mindset or what you were like as a kid, or things that kind of came together to inform who you are. It may not be a direct result, but some things that may have gone on, like in your upbringing, to kind of, to have you be an athlete, a professional athlete, and then go on to do all the many things that you've done. Maybe something that shaped you the most out of your your upbringing. I know that really simplifies it because I know there's been a lot, but maybe there's a couple of things.
I'll definitely try to simplify maybe some of the things that maybe form some of the traits. Listen, one thing I've learned after having 3 daughters and even my own experience, it's like there's certain things we're born how we're born, right? So, I think early on, I didn't always live with my parents, as a young person. At 2, I lived with a very loving couple that took care of me, and during that time, my father passed away, and, I moved back in and was raised in with my mother and was raised in the Caribbean. But there's a couple things that I would say naturally, I have, which is a kind of sense of organization. So no matter where I was, even if things were upside down, I was always trying to find ways to organize, even if it was my little corner, my little
Mm.
like if I was staying with other people, even if it wasn't a bedroom, right? It was just trying to find order where I could. And that has its good and bad traits, right? Like your ability, what I've learned in being in health and wellness is your ability to be adaptable and resilience is actually the highest form of performance. It isn't to be so powerful or explosive. Those things are great, but it's to be adaptable and to be resilient. So even though I had this trait of being pretty organized and really paying attention, I was always, even as a little kid, somebody who probably paid attention. And in some ways it was hypervigilance, but
Mm.
ultimately it's still a trait of like, well, what's that person about? And what's this about? And what's over there? And what's in the future? And all these things. So I ended up moving to Florida my junior year of high school. So it was good for me to grow up in the Caribbean because having an island mentality has I'll full circle that for you later, but one, my biological father is from Trinidad. Um, the obvious is I married Laird, who's from Hawaii. I met him when I was 25. So I think there was something in my development living on an island, which has been really a powerful influence in my life. One being, I wasn't raised to be like, you're not like, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? That really wasn't part of the vernacular where I grew up. It was sort of like you just are, you're just living. And, and maybe being grounded, like what you covet or what you value is sort of maybe more simple in a different way. So I think that that has come to really support me, not only as a person and how I make choices, but also how I relate to my husband and even how we raise our children. So that certainly has informed me and then I got the opportunity to go to college on an athletic scholarship, which is a big surprise to me. I mean, I'm 6'3", so there's some obvious things there about how my childhood impacted that. And I always say I'm very coachable. I think
Mm.
I'm a good athlete. I'm probably not a great athlete. I know a lot of great athletes. I think I'm a good athlete who's coachable. Um, and so then after my first year playing ball, I actually lived in New York and was modeling, which is part of why, you and I are talking. So I used that as an opportunity to become more independent and that discipline I had learned from sport, the ability to be around all different kinds of people certainly was helpful in fashion. And learning how to kind of show up and do a good job. So between sport, and then the other side of it for me was I recognized good fortune. So I think having a little bit of turbulence as a young person, when I did have all this good fortune come my way, whether it was through athletic scholarships, great coaches, supportive adults, being able to work in fashion, which is a it's an opportunity, right? Um, where else do they pay you to not you don't have to be qualified for anything, and you just have to kinda show up and, try to be
Look
pleasant
pretty.
and yeah.
So
And
yep.
so, I think I was always, pretty aware of,
Mm.
my good fortune,
Mm.
and so, that led to all the things, right? So college volleyball led to professional volleyball. Modeling led to understanding about how to sort of try your best to cultivate an image that maybe in my case, reflected me as much as I could, but also with a little bit more polish on it because you understood the power of that. So sort of like even though you're playing professional sports or doing a Nike commercial, it's like, well, your director is David Fincher or who's shooting you is Peggy Sirota or whatever. So it was sort of all that education really coming together, and then it's just gone on from there, meeting Laird, who's a surfer, and then following being involved with things that I really was interested in. So whether it was, television around sports and training or food companies that is, around with, like, things with no artificial or natural flavors, everything has just been kind of the ongoing story and evolution of those values and experiences.
It's interesting, you think you know where you wanna go in an interview. I don't know if this happens for you, and then someone says something, like, a million interesting things, and you wanna catch on to that, which is something I didn't, do in our previous interview. But you brought up hypervigilance, and being really aware of your surroundings and kinda I'm the same. I'm super hypervigilant, and it's made me, like, I'm amazing at work. I'm super thorough. You know, I can see things up, down, and around. Do you think that how like, in my experience, that kind of, um, turbulent childhood, like, made me have that hypervigilance, which was great at work and stuff like that, but I didn't have the confidence because I lacked the structure. Like, how because you are a confident person. I don't think that people have that kind of road, and certainly modeling, which is like, and I, people are so insecure. But how do you think you got the confidence to do all these things? The
I
opportunities were there, but
Yeah.
opportunity, it's where opportunity meets luck is where you meet opportunity and
Yeah,
whatever it is. But
I think what happens.
things were happening for you, but I wouldn't
Mhm.
call them lucky. I would say you're the kind of person who gets an opportunity and goes for it.
Yes, and I would say that initially that came from I didn't really have a choice, right? I really needed to take care of myself. And so in a way beyond my own kind of, as you call it, confidence is, yeah, I am uncomfortable, but and also I had come a little bit spent some time in athletics, which is very uncomfortable, right? So I had a relationship with being uncomfortable and saying, okay, and
Mm.
the desire to do this or see if this will take me somewhere is far greater than my discomfort. And then what happens is that body of evidence, right? So you do it enough times, what you start to learn is, oh yeah, I'm uncomfortable. And I don't really know, but I have the confidence to know that I have learned things in the past and learned how to do things. So that body of evidence, Ryan Holiday talks about that. The guy who writes the Daily Stoic is you build upon, you get those small wins, and you start to go, even if I don't know, I know I'm a person who can at least figure some of it out. And I also know that every time I'm wildly uncomfortable, so many great things came because I was willing not to be led by that emotion. And
Mhm.
and I heard something actually today. I interviewed someone today who writes a book about visualization. And people have to understand the difference between confidence and self-confidence. So, confidence is like sort of you go out in the world and people see you, and it's sort of this thing that people think you have. But self-confidence is really that inside job of doing the work on yourself, of knowing that you're going to be okay if somebody doesn't like you, that you have a relationship with yourself, knowing that not everyone's going to understand you or get you, that your job isn't to please everybody, but to be the best version of yourself, whatever you decide that is, to work on that and to work on that every day. And I think when you have that practice, and I think I've had that because of athletics, because of a long relationship, because of being a mother, all these things where each day I have really looked at how could I be better today. I think that that actually is the kind of stuff, those kinds of practices that give us self confidence to then be able to kind of get your ass kicked when you go out in the world and want to try new stuff.
Let's talk about your athleticism and like, how did you even get into volleyball? You said it was kind of like, oh, what a shock or a surprise. Like, did you just
Yeah.
fall into it? Did you want to play it? How did that whole thing start?
I did a little when I lived in St. Thomas, and very little. I wasn't particularly good. Again, always very tall. And then when I moved, to St. Pete, Florida, I went to a very, very small high school called Keswick Christian, and I was 15 and 6'3", and so normally
Mm.
schools like that, if you had talent, you went to a bigger school to get attention, so, they were like, "Oh, you're gonna play," so kind of getting reps because I was needed,
Mm.
and then I liked being a part of something. I loved being a part of a team. I loved learning something new. I liked improving. I liked working hard. I really appreciated a good coach because if you're not have if you don't have that from your family necessarily, then you really respond, I think, often to that kind of figure in your life. And then when I got the offer to go to college, that was going to be the only way I went to college is if I,
Wow.
took care of it. So and then again, my college coach, Dr. Cecile Renaud, who is still my dear friend to this day, um, she navigated me taking on modeling and playing volleyball in college and doing both and living in New York and Tallahassee. So I associated a lot of really good things, but
Mm.
mostly going back to that self confidence. Volleyball was something I had to earn, and I think I really uh, respected myself more because you couldn't fake it, right? Like
Mhm.
you really had to put the time in. So that environment, I really thrived in that environment because it felt really pure to me. And I really and listen, the game is fun on top of it all. I like to compete. So it was sort of a
Yeah.
lot of variables. But if you'd said to me when I was in 10th grade, hey, do you think you're going to play college athletics? And certainly, even in college, do you think you're going to play professionally? The answer definitely would have been, yeah, no.
Wow. Um, so you definitely think it helped with your, you talk about the inside job, and I know that you're constantly, your show really is about peak everything performance. I knew you first. Well, I guess I knew you first as a model, and then I learned more about your athleticism, and as we know that I'm interested in both. But what was the transition then between volleyball and modeling? I think it's really interesting that your coach, it sounds like she was involved the whole time because confidence in sports, which I think is such a I to me, it's my baseline, as, like, my thing that what could is the thing that you couldn't give up in your wellness practice is movement and working out, and I do think it gives you confidence and all that. So, tell me how that happened initially. How did you start modeling? Did you get discovered? Did someone
Yeah,
say you should?
in a way, I had almost a typical discovery. I was a junior in high school, and my mother, of all things, put me into a finishing school in St. Pete, like in a mall,
Oh,
and I was an unusual looking kid, and so they instantly, to the woman's credit, put me in touch with a scout/manager, this woman named Coral Weigel, and she had a relationship with IMG models before they were really IMG. It was run by a woman named Laureen Childers, and they were really brand new. They said, "Oh, yeah, we can send you to Europe right now," and then my mother requested, could I finish high school? And that is actually so that was only gonna be a year and a half. I graduated at 17. It wasn't like it was a big deal. I wasn't gonna be over the hill, but then I got the offer to play ball, so I went to college first and played my first year of volleyball on scholarship, and then that summer, because of legal holidays, I, I could work that summer. So
wow.
I I went to New York and, I'll give you a quick story. If it wasn't for Rachel Williams and Ashley Richardson, there's a good chance I wouldn't have quite had the career I did because they sort of were a little bit ahead of me and they made room for very big girls, right?
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise it was, Cindy and Christy and Naomi and Linda and, Claudia Schiffer and, Helena Christensen and sort of this whole group.
Which I do totally, like, think of you as, but it's interesting because the 2 women that you mentioned and you were definitely bigger, athletic, like, just it was like, put the S in super.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Rachel Williams was very athletic. Ashley was just a very big girl, right? Curvy, tall, the whole thing. So I can remember going to see a woman named Preston, who was the model booker for American Vogue. I went to
oh my god,
Condé.
Preston Davis? I know her.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you need to tell her I send her my love.
I
So I
definitely well,
walked
I
in.
wow, okay, tell
Yeah, I walked into Preston, and she was like, "Oh yeah, no, no, no. Like you're way too big for us. Like there's just no way, right?" And this was in the old Madison Avenue, office.
350 Madison,
Of
Terror Central.
Yeah. of Condé Nast, so I went there, and she was like, "No." She goes, "But I know someone who's gonna like you." And she fucking sent me to Steven Meisel directly, right into the studio. And he was with Orbe and Francois Nars, and they were shooting Linda Evangelista for Italian Vogue, and I got sent there, right then, and he booked me for, 8 pages of Italian Vogue on the spot, and it's probably because I remind him of Rachel Williams, and,
Oh, stop. No, your face is, like, insane. You have, like, the eyes that are on the side of your head. It's
well,
pretty, but you're anyways, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Steve
so we
when
so
people
we had
send you to
so
Steven, you have something.
Steven Meisel, it wasn't like he was trying to be my best friend. But and actually, I'll tell you who else was really, really there was a couple people that were really impactful. Another one was Stephen Klein. Stephen Klein booked me a ton and worked with me a ton long before I had had a career. And he was very, very generous. He was often tough on me because I was always very physical. And I think he liked that about my body, that is sort of muscular, but he booked me a ton, and so I would work with him, and that first summer, I mean, I worked with Irving Penn, um, it goes on and on. I was really, really fortunate. Funny thing is I barely made money. I just did a ton of editorial.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you don't when the editorial gives you the money jobs, you know what I mean? But doing that editorial was like
Yeah,
everybody needs that, you could be
yeah.
like other
You're
people
building your
were
book.
catalog girls, and it was a bit harder to get into the editorial.
Yeah, and so I was building my book, and luckily I got into the sweet spot on some things, and then I think the following year, so then I competed again August. So I was in New York that summer, and then I competed that August to December, and then I gave up my scholarship and I paid to play because then that January I moved to New York. So it would have been illegal to be on scholarship and gone to work. And I made a deal with my coach that I would come to summer school, get credits so I was eligible to play by NCAA rules, and I would be in Tallahassee for my season, no modeling gigs from August to December, but then I would work January sort of through, May. Then I go quick to summer school, one more month of work, and then right to volleyball. So I did that for another 2.5 years. And, people like Gilles Ben Simon took me under his wing. Um, Rico Pullman, who passed away in a plane crash, I worked with quite a bit. I worked a ton with Rico for Harper's Bazaar, tons and tons, and he made me the most Gilles always made me look like a really pretty version of myself. Rico made me the most feminine version.
Oh,
Um,
so it
yeah,
is like a painter, a paint
yeah, and Philip Dixon, and he worked with me in a whole other way, so he would totally go for that, like, wild kinda side of me. So I had people that were really, really generous to me and took really beautiful pictures, and I just happened to be in them. And, so I had great again, great fortune, it's not easy to do that normally, and, and they would be frustrated with me. I would go to Paris and they were like, "Are you modeling or aren't you? Are you playing the ballet? Like, which is it?" Because then I would have all these pictures come out and then I was gone and nobody could book me. I was booked out for 3 months. So in that way, besides my height and my lack of diversity about the way I look, I'm not a versatile girl who can go like this and like that. It's kind of like I kind of have a look.
Yeah,
Um, that was at a time when there were so many girls, right? And they were extraordinary. Like they would be with Peter Lindbergh in the desert, and then they'd be, in the highest of fashion, and then they're like Patrick Demarche, and then so these girls that were so extraordinary. I mean, Linda Evangelista is like the greatest chameleon of all, right? So I think I knew really early, like, okay, I have a place right now in this business. It's only gonna last so long. You barely fit into anything.
wow.
And then the balance was staying fit enough to play ball, but not getting too big that I actually couldn't fit into anything.
Yeah, like,
Because
I
as
don't
it
even
was,
that. Yeah.
I was a size 8 as it was, and for me as a size 8 is a very lean me. So, they really people worked around me, and it was great, but then once I finished, I I I didn't know I was gonna play professionally. I moved to Miami. I thought, "Oh, I can work from there," and in Miami, I was like a killer because I had been in New
Yeah.
York, so those I was like, "Okay, yeah, I can." So I could work in Miami, and then I picked up the beach game, and then a year and a half later, somebody said to me, "You should really move to California and try to play." So I did, and then I went on from there, and then I got a Nike deal and on and on. So I sort of transitioned and brought everything together and morphed it together, and sort of took all those experiences and was again really fortunate to be able to understand just how to kind of play the two together.
I mean, my mind is, like, blown off it's this my, the cranium is gonna burst and there'll be blood everywhere. I thought I knew everything about you. I'm like, "What are you gonna talk about, Gabby? Like, how are you gonna, like, regurgitate, like, everything you've said before?" But Gabby, I actually did not know you were a model before you were a pro volleyball player. I did not know that. Did
Oh
you know
no, I
that?
had a full career as a girl that nobody knew played volleyball, and I was a straight up live in New York, go to work model.
Okay. So let so
I wasn't
this
a
is
sport.
me
I wasn't a sports person who was like, I model. I was
Oh,
like,
I thought you were a sports person that was gorgeous, and then they're like,
no,
"Let's make her a model." Like, what happens
no.
now? Duh, Tracy.
No, they were
Okay.
no, it's why would you know? But it was completely a separate, and it really had to stay separate until I could be professional, because in those days, they didn't have an NIL, and it was really frowned upon, and that is why actually I gave up my scholarship so I wouldn't have any problems with the NCAAs.
What's NIL? He's
Name and likeness. So young college
Mhm.
athletes now can make money off of their image. In my day, if you it appeared that you were making any money having to do with your sport, you were considered professional, and you would get into a hassle.
Okay, the other reason why Gabby right, duh, is my first guess is because, it's normally about fashion people and how they got into it, got famous, stayed into it, what are their wellness hacks, like, how do they keep their mind straight? It's such an insane business with no roadmap and everything else, and it's all about fashion and using their tools to help regular people, okay? That's just being in fashion, like one crazy business. Then there uh, and I talked to him about all that stuff, and then there's Gabby, and inevitably it come up some kind of, fitness or supplements or things that they're doing, and then there's Gabby who has all that, and you've had this trajectory and we'll talk about some of that stuff, but can we just go back for a second to you walk into Preston Davis' office at Vogue, and basically, yes, what did used to happen then is, like, someone lets a tiger out of the cage, and they go somewhere, and they're like, you either let Steven or it's Patrick, and, they're both great, but I remember when Doutzen came to see me at a magazine. I'm like, "Oh my god, she's amazing." And I called her to book her for something. They're like, "Oh, she's already at Stevens." When you go to Stevens, directly to Stevens, you're made. Did you
Yeah.
know what was happening and what was that first shoot like? So you're telling me that your very first shoot was for Italian Vogue?
I don't know if it was my first.
No, but I mean your first like, big like
Well, it was either that or British Vogue with Stephen Klein. I went pretty quick, listen, I can say that it's all about if you get that one right person to think something about you. IMG could barely call Stephen Meisel back in those days. If Preston hadn't sent me,
oh, Preston
IMG
was like back and then. I mean,
yeah, but they didn't have that relationship. They had one girl
yeah.
that you may or may not have heard of, Julie Anderson. She kind of had this long, nose, large mouth. Her and I were the most working girls at that agency. And a girl named Carrie Johnson, who was my roommate, who was like just pounded the catalog every single day. She was like just
Mhm.
a cash genius. I would come home with like Kevin Aqua makeup, like a psychopath, and she'd be looking all high polished, like a most gorgeous secretary. And we would look at each other like, "Do you want to do this?
Where have you
You,
been
is
today?
this?" Yeah.
How was your day?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, but I got a lot of quick starts and, so Stephen Meisel, yeah, the shoe is
Like, what
extraordinary.
was that like? Like, what? Well, first, let me say one thing. Uh, so doesn't I mean, Preston Davis doesn't like. I don't. Like I just know her through friends. It's through a very dear friend of mine, and I haven't honestly spent that much time with her. But before I met her, I knew who she was. Preston Davis from American Vogue, and or Preston. I think she had a different last name before. I don't know, but Preston would not see you if she didn't recognize something in you, and for her to see someone from what you're telling me is that IMG back then didn't have all that in a bag of chips. She must have seen something, and maybe she didn't think you were right for, American Vogue or whatever, but, like, so
Oh,
even to get in to see her,
I
and
don't
then for
even
her
know
to sort of
how.
anoint you.
I
She
don't know
doesn't say
how I got into her because I don't even know if I didn't. It's not like I had a bunch of tear sheets when I was in magazines, and literally,
no,
and I started.
they send you a Polaroid that, like, people will send booking editors, like, a little snapshot of you.
Yeah.
When Doutzen is a Polaroid. That's all they had of her, and everybody wanted to see her. Send her in, send her in, send her in. So I'm sure that's what I can
Well,
see now
well,
what happened to
literally
you.
before I walked through the full doorway towards her, she was like, "Yeah, no, you're way too big for us."
Well, because it's probably like sample whatever, it doesn't really matter. She got you into Steven Meisel.
No, but
Steven
she
Meisel
said,
cut
I have someone that I think's really gonna like you," and I was like, "Okay."
okay.
And this is in the days of payphones, so I call my agents and I go, "Well, I'm being redirected. I'm being redirected to some guy named Steven Meisel," and they probably,
I'm sure they, like
yeah.
and they're
So
like,
I
"Oh, okay, go. Yeah, go ahead."
yeah, and I
Okay.
didn't know much about fashion at that time, but I did certainly know who Linda was, and when I walked into the studio, Linda was there.
She was.
Yeah, her and Orbe and Francois, they were all doing a shoot for Italian Vogue, and her hair was short, and no pictures were out yet of her with short hair, so it was very interesting.
So what year was that?
1988.
Oh my god. Well, you've really stumped the commissioner here. Okay. Well, that's amazing. Okay, so when I just thought you were like a supermodel was just I don't know, I think, I clearly understand what
I
the
listen, I did it the old-fashioned way. I used to though, after about a year, I was like, "I'm not carrying my book anywhere." I would make my book be messengered to wherever I was going. I would refuse to walk the street or walk anywhere with my book in my hand.
Okay, so that right there, like, I mean, you had balls back then, you know what I mean? So then that you had mojo. I was even gonna say, like, what the theme of this episode with you really is mojo. You're the queen of mojo. But back then, a model saying, I mean, if there's the famous Linda, like, I'm not gonna get out of bed for under $10,000 a day, whatever.
Yeah, that
But
was happening.
but
That's not where I was coming from. I was coming from.
no,
It felt
that's
like
just
it felt like a
no.
sheep move to me, like you're walking through the streets, maybe you had a bag, and it looked
Well, it's
like a
so
sheep
lame.
going to
Because
appointments.
yeah,
And
girls walked around with, like, little portfolios, like, "I'm a model, I'm in New York, and I'm going
I'm not
through
doing it.
it,"
I was
and it's
like,
like,
"I'm not doing that." And it was like, "I'll have my book meet me there, I'll go there to meet these people, my pictures will be there. I cannot be walking in with my book," like because this whole thing of, like, I'm there to
"Oh,
meet you, but I didn't want to feel like I was always trying to sell myself. Like,
yeah."
I'm
Walk
either
in,
your
you're like, "Let's have a look at your book."
yeah, I'm either your jam or I'm not. Yeah. And I'm not gonna when I show up, I'll be on time. If it's a 10-hour shoot or a 12-hour shoot, I'm gonna work all day long. You're never gonna hear attitude from me. But there was a
Mhm,
part of me that was like, "Oh, I don't wanna do this." Like, I don't feel desperate, and I don't wanna look desperate, and that
mhm.
something about that made me think, that's not the look that you want."
So, well, I could go on and on about asking about all these, fashion shoots. Maybe I'll just do one, like, fun question. What
Okay.
was your favorite shoot that you ever did as a model?
Oh my gosh, it's too
I know, this
I
is
think
so
that's a
uncool.
hard
I should have sent you questions.
No, no, I think it's
I didn't really think we were gonna talk so much about fashion. I really had no idea that
I mean,
that
it's
this deep.
impossible. I mean, listen, working with Mr. Penn was just a genuine, honor.
So tell what
Um,
was that for? Because he back then was I thought he was only doing American Vogue.
yeah, it was for American Vogue, and,
Oh, so
it
it
was
did
a
come
series that, I think Paulina Poroskova was in the series with me. We were not shooting on the same day. Um, and, of course, what's her name? Is it Grace Coddington?
Oh, Grace.
Grace was there in the back with her little, glasses
Or was it
looking.
Phyllis Posnick? I mean, Phyllis Posnick ended up
No,
to do
I
that.
worked with Phyllis with Wayne Mazer, who I wanted to put in a headlock for American Vogue. Phyllis was
Dude,
with me, and I used to work a lot, a ton, 2 people, very interesting. Sarah Jane Hoare, I worked with a ton for British Vogue, and I worked a ton with Manuela Pavese from Italian Vogue.
ugh,
So
I
I would work with Manuela with Albert Watson.
ugh.
Albert was also very generous to me.
He's a nice guy. I never worked with him, but I heard he's a very nice guy.
Yeah, and I mean, freaking being able to be in front of their camera, their lighted shot, Manuela's eye. I mean, these are talented people. So you know pretty quickly you're lucky you, because they could put anyone there. And so I always appreciated the professionalism. I used to joke Albert takes an hour and a half to light the shot and then he shoots you in 4 minutes.
Yeah, he's a pro. So, wow, and Sarah Jane Hoare, legend. Manuela Pavese is probably one of my favorite, like, style I just talked about her,
Oh, I
on
love
a shoot the
she
other
tor I
day. She's
tortured
just
her.
Oh, what do you mean? Oh, because it was hard to fit in samples. I mean, listen, you're beautiful and you're skinny, your body's amazing, but you are not a sample size. You know what I
I
mean? Like, that's just
tortured her.
how it is.
I tortured poor Manuela. She was clamping, cutting, and clamping behind me.
Yeah.
"Oh, God, you're so big." I was like, "I know."
But I mean, you want me here, you gotta make it work. But I mean, back then it was like, and even though, they only have one sample set, sometimes they have two.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting because a lot of times you mainly wouldn't cut things unless it was like a big celebrity. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm shooting, Nicole
Yeah.
Kidman, I'm shooting da da. So I just like hacked up the back of the, look number 47 or look number one or the closing look or whatever. But I mean, obviously
This
you have
was
something
this was
extraordinary that,
this was before the actresses were in the magazines, and,
no, that's what I mean. For them to do it for
well, no, it's
you.
because we were shooting the collections for the so I could never do the shows, but I would shoot the collections for the magazines, and so they cut it because it was for the collections for the magazine, and so, they would do it.
And
Not
it
for me.
was Vogue, so and it
Yeah,
is
not
Vogue.
for me.
But even at magazines, they didn't really let you cut stuff. If you did stuff, you had to really explain, like, what happened, get things wet and all that. I'm just saying that it speaks again to, like, your extraordinariness as a model. I always thought you were really pretty, and I loved your pictures, but, like, the stuff you're talking about with the people that you're talking about is, like, next level. I'd always call you a supermodel also because you were in that category with all those girls, and you were doing the top things at that time, but, I guess I didn't know it was so prolific, so excuse me,
Oh,
we could do a whole separate
yeah,
episode on fashion.
it was a long time ago. That was okay. It's
And I was late. No, I don't think I've ever talked to somebody who's, like, done all that and then quit, basically. Quit, like, so let's go into that. I mean, you're living this dream life. You're shooting with every photographer for every magazine that any model would dream of, okay?
Mhm, mhm.
Nobody, okay? Tom Brady didn't even quit, okay? And he coulda quit. And I say that because, as you're an athlete, you age out and whatever. And as a model, like you said, there's a lifespan or whatever, but it sounded like you were at the top of what you were doing. How did you decide to move along?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I was 22, right? And that's when I had the opportunity to become a professional athlete. And for me, the writing was on the wall. I could do all this great work with these incredibly talented people, but remember that time when I was in fashion was and kind of a unique time w- uh as far as like all the girls, right? And so
Mhm.
I think I was really keen to understand I was gonna understand my limitation. I was gonna be able to work a lot, but there was gonna be a group above me that they were just gonna slay all day long.
Mhm.
And
Mhm, okay.
so I sort of look well, first I followed what I enjoyed the most, and I enjoyed being an athlete.
And I'm
And
just gonna say right here that I was talking about being in the you were in the party, you were in the
Oh,
mix, you
yeah.
were at the you were and most people, like, when I said, "How did you try to" "How did you jump off?" Most people do not have something else to jump off to right away, so I will use that as a disclaimer, you know what I
Well,
mean?
of
You
course,
did
I
have
I
something,
I
but it's still
transitioned.
pretty glamorous
Yeah, but I wasn't
stuff that
that
you were
didn't
doing.
yeah, but it was, but, people misconstrue what the glamorous like, what does that mean? Like, you have
Mm,
pretty pictures in magazines and you're wearing very expensive clothing. For me, I was clear, like, "Oh, this is interesting and novel and really cool," and again, these are high level people I'm working with, um, but the opportunity to be a professional athlete, felt a little more unlimited to me and a little more genuine to who I probably was in the world, and what I wanted to be spending my time on, and it was a calling. I think we all have little whispers because people think I'm a genius because it's like, "Oh, how'd you do that?" It's like, I'm not. I just followed the whisper, and the whisper was like, "Hey, this is great, but there's something over there. It may be hard, but go there." And so I followed the whisper,
wow.
and then, then you build your own lane, right? Like, so for me as an athlete who had had this background, um, and then and go on from there, right? Like, whether it's, starting businesses or learning how to coach or create con, programming, whatever, all the things, this different skills that I've had the, time to develop. It was just because I followed my interest and my whisper. And so what
Mm,
happens is you're only competing with yourself. I don't have to worry about, what's she doing? What is he doing? What are they doing? Because I'm just doing what I'm doing. And then what's cool is then you have something that people you can't shortcut, which is experience. And so what happens is you start to build upon, and it isn't based on everyone's opinion or do they like you or how old you are. It becomes about your skill set or your
mm,
experience. And so for me, I think I always felt comfortable that that would be the better way for me to live.
mhm, mhm. Um, and then how did insider training come about? And this is another thing that really bonded me to Gabby, my super soul sister, is that I was not into working out when I was a kid. I was very short. No one picked me for their teams. I didn't think I had any athletic prowess. I did, dance and whatever, just a little tiny thing. And and then I got into, working out because the models did it, and I wanted to look like them. Like, I literally thought so I went to the gym, the Victoria's Secret girls, they're like, "Oh, you gotta go to, Peak Perform" it was called Peak Performance, so funny. And, Adriana Lima was there and everybody was there, and, I remember complaining like, "Oh, why don't I look like them?" And they're like, "You're not 6 feet tall, so you're not gonna look like them." But to cut a long story short, I really got into working out and I realized I was kind of athletic. They're like, "Hey, you're pretty athletic," and I just started feeling like strong and I loved I was already going to a gym where they were like, they were talking about athletes' performance. They were talking about the places that people were going, like the people that you were interviewing. And so I knew, and medicine ball, just stuff that was new. So I caught this show that Gabby used to host called Insider Training. And I thought it was so fascinating because she would talk to athletes about their getting to peak performance, which A was ahead of its time. Okay. B, because I don't think peak performance, was it might have been a thing in the athletic world, but certainly not in the world of regular people, which it is now. And you were so curious. The questions that you asked were just so fascinating. No one ever asked athletes stuff like that. I would see on regular TV, but it was about their mindset and it was about their body. How did that come about? Was that your idea? Did someone else have the idea and they come to you? How did that show happen? It was like a cable TV show.
Yeah, I think it was with like, you know, a discovery arm of their one of their brands. I did a show called MTV Sports prior to that where I would interview athletes in a much more quick, superficial rock and roll kind of way. And I enjoyed that medium a lot, and I used to write a column for Elle magazine for several years, 3 or 4 years, and it was sort of about fitness and training and all of that. I wedged Gilles Ben-Simon and said, "Hey, I wanna write for the magazine," when I was modeling, so he's like, "Oh, ask them," and they gave me a column. So I had been communicating about this space in other ways, and then by the time I did insider training, I was a professional athlete. So these were things that I was pretty intimate with, and, I just talked to people the way that if I was sitting at the dinner table with them and wanted to learn from them or understand what they do or how they get it done, and try to be considerate or thoughtful when I approach them. Um, so yeah, so that show, I wanted to call it like The Art of Training, uh, but that name, I guess, wasn't catchy enough, so they called it Insider Training, her and so, yeah, it's a great experience. I really do enjoy talking to other people and learning from them because it sort of just helps you think about the world in a different way.
And I also didn't know that you did, like, an MTV sport. You really stumped the commissioner on this one. And I even look at Wikipedia too, because I was like, "Oh, Trace, maybe you don't know everything about Gabby. You should like do some digging, really see if there's something else." And lo and behold, it's like you're the little onion layer. Oh, and then I did this, and then I did that. Oh, what did I tell you about that? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That was it. Oh, and I wrote a column for Elle. It was like NBD. I just said, "Jill, can you speak to Dada?" So,
Yeah. Well,
what
listen,
about writing in the
that's why you have conversations so you can learn about people. I wouldn't expect anyone to know, what I was doing, 30 years ago. Like, come on.
Well, okay, but I've seen you in, like, your notes that you do for your, and I've seen them on your desk, um so, okay, so the writing let's talk about the writing for Elle magazine.
Mhm.
"Hey, Jill, I was thinking I wanna write," like, did you write? Were you just smart? Do you like writing?
Yeah.
How did
Well,
that come about? And also, like, writing about sports and health and stuff. I mean, what year was that? I guess there was, like, some things were coming up about, like, working out or maybe, like, Radu or was kinda in or something in
that
fashion
was
world.
probably like, 91 to 95, so maybe 21 to
Hmm,
24 or 5, and I had
that's
been shooting with Gilles for many years, and I had a great relationship with him because we would train together after work. We'd be somewhere shooting and then, we'd go train together, and so that's a
I
good
didn't
length.
know he worked out. Did he work out back then?
Oh, Gilles? Yeah. I saw Gilles about, 6 weeks ago in Venice, and, you know, he's still rolling. So,
Oh, yeah, 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 but what was that like? Was he dying? Oh my god, he must have been dying.
well, no, we've stayed in touch all this time. It's not
Oh,
I haven't
oh,
I
okay.
haven't I haven't seen him in many years. I mean, he shot Laird and I and over the years and
Mhm.
all kinds of stuff, but so we were shooting together and I said, "Hey, I really think," and now I had been in the magazine quite a lot, and I was like, "Hey, I
Yeah,
would
you
like
were
to
in
write."
there a ton.
Yeah, I would like to write for Elle, and he had obviously a lot of leverage there with, Regis Peñez, and they were basically in control of the whole magazine. And it was just 1 page, and it was every month, and it was sort of, like how to, you know, have a strategy to go into a gym, and, like, so I'd write about that, especially if, like, people wanna talk to you or, like, whatever the things were. So it was really around, care or, like, I'd interview Steffi Graf for one of the things. So it was just
Oh, cool.
something in and around, if not sport, usually it was more about, like, uh, I don't wanna use the word wellness or fitness or something, just
I know, what was it called back then? Like, what did they even talk about? How did they refer it? Like, what
uh,
bucket did that fall into back then?
it was just my own column. It was like Gabrielle Reece something, like yeah.
But did they say, like, "Here's our sports column," or was it like, "Here's our fitness column"?
Oh, it was probably a little light, little sprinkly, little like,
Yeah.
"When you wanna go to the gym."
Yeah, but it's very kind of visionary. Again, I feel like what you've always been like one step ahead of the curve. I'm sure I know that you would not say that's intentional at all. But I think these whispers that you're talking about, which we all know in our space is like the gut feeling. It's the gut of it's the brain of the body and the senses. I think that people have a problem recognizing it. I think people have a problem trusting it,
Yeah.
and I definitely think people have a problem, acting on it, not trusting it, or whatever. So,
Well,
um, I
I mean,
think we have
listen.
a natural gravitation towards maybe being ahead of the curve because you have a gut that is a bit of a visionary, and then by listening to that, you would do something like, "Let's pitch a column," when that kind of thing back then, to the best of my knowledge, was not done.
Well, y maybe. I mean, the world's a loud place, and so it's more if you're hardwired to trust yourself or to trust the world, and the fact that I got to do any of this was also really good timing for me, right? Like, the fact that I could play sports or that there like, if I tried to model in the late '90s, there would have been no place for me, right? So,
Mm,
it's recognizing the timing the people before you who create the opportunity, but it's also knowing how to listen to your own like, how do I fit into the world? How do I contribute
mhm,
versus how do I fit in? And so I think I
mhm,
had more of that self-talk of like, well, what ways am I going to show up in the world, or am I going to contribute? What does that look like? And I think I asked myself that more than how can I be a part of the world?
mhm. Which is a really also a very, evolved place to be, especially at that age. I mean, I could look at
Mhm.
you now and be like, "Oh my god, she's so evolved, like, listen to her on the show, look how much she knows," but, I mean, you had a lot of the things that you talk about on your show, which are very cutting edge. I would say that you had a lot of the mindset, the drive, all the inner life, the inner work that I love how you talk about all of that and, on your show, how it all relates together, but you also had the idea and you asked. You said, "Hey." I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even ask.
I also yes, that's true. And I did have the audacity to ask. And also I knew that I would work hard and I would work hard to do a good job. And if I
Mhm,
didn't think I could do that, I wouldn't ask.
mhm.
Because my whole thought was, I'm going to ask, but I also know I'm going to try to bring value.
So get back to so did you kinda were you a good writer? Did they edit you a lot? Or, in the magazine world, a lot of times they're short on
Yeah.
patience about they you have to be a writer, you know what I mean? Obviously, you're doing something well, or they might be calling you, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna
Yeah. I mean,
pick
I
this
wrote the
thing apart."
columns and they
Mhm,
again, this is not rocket science, and they were very straightforward, and tonally my voice was pretty
mm,
lined up with the writing,
like,
and so,
yeah.
they would edit it, but it was sort of an area might know better than they did, so I just tried to
Mm,
do it in a rhythm and a pace that I thought would be good for the reader, clear,
mhm.
a couple of takeaways, get in, get out.
Mhm. Mhm, m'kay. So then, was that after the MTV thing? Or
So,
at currently? Uh-huh.
they
There were a
overlapped
lot of the
a bit.
MTV.
They
Okay.
overlapped a little bit, mhm. Yeah,
How
'cause
did the MTV
Dan Cortez
oh
got hurt doing
oh my god, I
events.
remembered.
So they brought me in to be the next dummy to do the interviews and do whatever sport the person was doing because it was Dan's idea, the show was Dan's idea. So he would do the wraparounds, the celebrity interviews, and then he'd go, "Oh, we're gonna go see Gabby Reece. She's over here doing this activity with this person," and they break to me, and then I believe Henry Rollins was on the show as well doing his own segments.
That's so funny. I heard Henry Rollins. I totally remember the Dan Cortez show. So, okay, they ask you to be on this. I mean, I just think you were like, yeah, people are magnetized towards you. That's cool. I'm so glad I'm not the only one. Whatever. I'm not a weirdo. I thought I was a weirdo. I'm not. Other people are attracted to Gabby Reece. They want you to be on TV. Da da da. So fine, great. Da 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 da. And then we're not even to like the year 2000. So tell me then what I'm trying to build up to the current empire and to the current,
Oh.
talk show, but, obviously, we don't have that much time, but tell me then, get me closer a little to what you're doing now.
Sure.
What was the trajectory? So going back, you're, a model, you know about the media, you're a professional
Mm.
athlete, you have that skill set, you've done media, you've, done all these things, and then what's the next evolution for you? I felt like you were a model, then, I don't know, get married, have kids.
Yeah, well, those are spread out a little bit. I mean, I was in did fashion, then had a career as an athlete, Then knees started getting sore, and so maybe 7 or 8 years after meeting Laird, I started my knees were really not great, and also beach volleyball is a wonderful game, but it also is a very small platform, and I had in my mind if I wanted to do other things, I didn't know what they were yet, that I would probably need to start building them now because as you know, everything takes time, and so, and that was also in parallel with, I have my husband came with a 4-month-old. Her mother is the primary parent, but there was our first daughter, and then I had my first biological daughter, in, 2003, and then
You
my
have
husband.
3 altogether.
Yes, and then another daughter, in 2008, but my husband's career really started to take off in, around that time, and so
Mhm.
there was a couple things happening where it was like having small children, having a partner who probably could use the support, his fire was sort of burning brighter at that time, and
Mhm.
it was sort of like taking advantage of momentum, so I really
Mhm.
pulled back quite a bit, um, and and was, uh, chose to be with my family and support my family and Laird, and, and then sort of I don't wanna say looked up a little bit, but probably did that for a solid, 7, 8 years, and then as the kids get a little bigger, you start to look around, and I always have my feet out there, just sort of talking about wellness or fitness or shooting TV shows or, what have you, and then in 2015, we ended up creating XPT and Laird Superfood in the same year.
Mm.
And I had created other businesses that were not successful, but so I've always had kind of the entrepreneur sort of energy. So you have to have a couple that fail, so you get led to maybe the ones that get some lift off. And I had created some curriculums starting in about 2009. Prior to that, so I was coaching and doing fitness more in a deeper level besides my own practice. I was working with other people. Then in 15, then we had this pool training. So now I was coaching pool training and I had other land training. You've joined me on one of those classes. And then Laird Superfood, which was really created from an organic habit of Laird's. And my involvement was helpful. Um, and so, for the last 10 years, it's been pretty rigorous with businesses. We took Laird Superfood public in 20. The girls, I'm taking my youngest to college in 2 weeks. And so I have some other projects. I actually have my 3rd book that I'm working on, that's due at the end of the year. And I have another idea of something I'm working on, that's using technology, but actually, I always say everybody has all the data. How do they have more experience and build a
Yes.
practice? Everybody's missing this so deeply. And
Yes.
so, as my kids got bigger, I started to create more energy, into looking at things that I thought would interest me going forward, now combining my last 20 years of experience. And so,
Yeah.
so my family, well, my health, I am, a brute about that and my own training, and then my relationship with my family and my friends, and of course with Laird.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
certainly being maybe almost busier than ever.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. I mean, when his career was kind of, firing up
Mhm.
and you were, being a mom and taking care being a family person
Mhm.
and supportive, it sounds like you were dabbling in things. I'm not as familiar with what you're doing then, but did you ever feel like a loss of identity or something like that? There's stories about people who are, like, famous and da da, and then all of a sudden maybe it's when they're, um, you know, maybe they are leaving before their time, they
Yeah.
get fired or whatever. You didn't have that thing, but did you, struggle with an identity situation when you took a little bit of step out of the major
Mm,
spotlight?
maybe I have always had a pretty good sense of the charade or the impermanence or the unsustainability of being, known. I mean, there's a couple people who can pull it off, but I feel like they're pretty dedicated to that. I, I think I'm certainly less known today than I was, when I was playing ball and doing all those things in TV. I have a different maybe body of work, like like years. So maybe that supports my career in a different way because it's like, sort of still going, if you will.
Oh,
But as
no, it's
far as like,
totally on fire. I feel like you're, like, already like, I'm talking about the time before the podcast and
yeah,
before
no, I know,
XPT, like, the 0
no,
little years, and
yeah, no,
it's
I know what you mean. Oh, I guess what I'm saying is even then, I was always really interested in my real life and it being kind of
Mhm,
interesting and sexy and fun, and not for the sake of attention. And so I was having, I my marriage is really obviously meaningful to me, and that
mhm,
relationship, and to also watch somebody who's so wildly dedicated to their craft, like Laird, get this opportunity to really sort of maybe get affirmation, like, "Hey, good job," by the world. I was excited for him for that, and then to be there, to have the opportunity, maybe this was a gift to me, to have it be more quiet so I could really be there for my daughters when they were little, because maybe I would have been more tempted if it was super busy, right? Because of the part of me that thinks, "Oh, I should work and get it when I can," or, all these things, maybe I would have been really tempted. So indirectly, there were moments where I was like, "Huh, I wonder if that's that part of my life and my career." Certainly occurred to me, but it didn't really eat me up inside.
mhm,
But actually always being really grateful that I could, in a very still way, be there for my family because that time is so short.
mm,
But I definitely faced the idea of, like, a public job is maybe over for me. And
mhm.
I don't know, though. I think when you have the feelings about your reasons why you do things, and that you do the things that really interest you, and you have real friendships and real relationships, I think it's okay.
So, then how did the Gabby Reece show, happen? Well,
Oh, well, kind of in like 2016, I actually was doing a podcast with Neil Strauss, who's an author. He wrote a book called The Game. We had a podcast called The Truth Barrel, and we used to do it inside my sauna at my house. And Neil and I are very dear friends, and I love Neil. And I thought, oh, it's going to be so interesting because we're so different, but some of our things are pretty similar.
mhm,
And we did that for a couple years and it was great, but I was too quick, I think, also to defer to Neil's point of view, in the sense of what he wanted to do.
mhm.
And so we stopped. We were both very busy, so we just stopped doing that. And then in 2020, I decided to do my own show, and so and to just trust myself that I would be able to have conversations week after week and not bore people to death. And so that was something I was like, I'm sure I can do
Uh,
6 really good shows, but can I do 400? Can I do 1,000, whatever it is.
oh my
So
god.
I think it's just going through that process of of doing better, being better, learning, seeing
Yeah,
how you wear it and
yeah,
appreciating the way other people do it, but having the self restraint to do it the way you do it and trust that. So it's always an ongoing, but I've really loved
yeah.
it because I call it forced learning, and there's a lot of learning, and it inspires me.
You guys gotta listen to this podcast if you haven't already. I mean, you're, like, such a superstar in so many most people I talk to, it's so funny because 'cause you're so humble. It's like, you should, like, be in a box and it's called humble pie, and then they open the box thinking it's a pie, and you jump out. That's how humble you are. You're sorry, making a joke. I can't see if you're okay. So, yeah, it's a great show, and I feel like it to me, knowing you and knowing your trajectory and as much as I did in insider training, like, it just makes so much sense how you can keep going. You're so curious, you're so wanting to, um, improve your quality of life. It's not selfish, you wanna share, but I think because of your curiosity, you can share and help people. And it's my husband's favorite show too. He will not listen to any podcast I ever put on. He goes, what's going on? What's going on with Gabby? Like, let's see. Oh, look who's Gabby talking to. He's like, she's so good. She's so good. Anyways, Gabby, let's talk about your show. I've already talked about how great it is. You interview all kinds of people. They're athletes. They're very into peak performance and whatever the case may be. lately it's been interesting. You've been having like human design and a few more brain, spirit type things. I loved your interview with the guy, the half pipe guy recently, and it was about mindset, which I thought it was just really all about mindset. It really wasn't about, his training or anything. I just was like, I'm mesmerized. I haven't quite finished it, but mesmerized, like mesmerized. This is a question I haven't really said I was gonna ask, and it's a difficult one, but if you look back over the time that you have done the podcast and all the people that you've interviewed about all the different things, do you feel like, A, have you changed? B, in what way or ways? And C, like, was there a pivotal, major, like, aha moment
Mm.
during all these years, and what was it? Because you've done some really I've learned so much from your show. It is deep, it's rich, it's complex, it's nuanced, it's subtle. It's like the way if your brain thinks like, "I wanna know." It's very like, an intuitive if you're a curious person, it's a very intuitive show, and, as much as it seems like it's really together, you definitely don't look like you're following a script, and you just pull these insane nuggets out. So, we'll go back to the question, A, have you changed? B, in what way or ways? And C, was there just like a major mind-blowing aha moment?
I mean, there's been a few. I think, one thing that reminds me is that sort of we're all really connected by our humanity. And so whether I'm talking to somebody who's talking about dementia or, you know, microbiome health or losing two children in a car accident, you realize that humanity, being in our humanity, the more we can do that, it feels like we can't go wrong. And so whether it's the actual information or the learning, it's seeing people who are also willing to put themselves in uncomfortable positions, who are willing to share ideas that maybe are not popular, but that is something that has shown up in their practice, whether it's a medical practice or something that they just feel completely compelled to have to say because they go, this feels like the right thing. And I'm willing to, talk about it if it can help someone else, even if it's unpopular. So I've seen a lot of that.
Mhm.
A person who has helped me personally a lot is Byron Katie. She has a
Oh my god, I knew that you were gonna say her. I don't
Nor
I mean, I didn't know, but, like, I didn't know that you were gonna say her, but
Katie.
I was
Katie's
love
Katie for me is maybe if you're building a blueprint about, one time maybe 8 years ago we were going through something very challenging with one of my daughters, and she said to Laird and I, "You know what the good news is? She's either going to choose to do it or she's not." And she said, "And you know what the bad news is?
mm,
She's either gonna choose to do it or she's not." And so it's things like that where if you really think about that, it's very simple, but it's everything, right? And it's thinking we're in control or, what you think of me is none of my business.
mhm.
And just even her first question, right, in her program, is it true? We have
I
all
mean,
these
Gabby,
Yes.
after I listened to that interview the interview that you did with her, I don't know how many times you've done it, but it was, whatever, it was an interview with her, and she said, "Is it true?
Mhm.
Is it true?"
Is it true?
I don't use it all the time, but sometimes I'll go back and I'll be like, "Is it true?" So to me, that's like a game-changing, moment, but
Yeah.
are you saying that of all the people that you've talked to and everything, has she sort of made the most
Mm,
impact on your life and sort of like, how do I go through life now in my
yeah.
mindset and my problem solving and my
Yes, if I'm looking at first principles, right? If I tell you who helped me solve my microbiome issue or my mitochondrial dysfunction, that would be great and it has its place in the universe, but if I can go back to not living by the narratives that I have created that are not true, that would be the most liberating thing I could do. So if you say to me first principles, I think Byron Katie is definitely a powerful place to start. Her 4 questions, right? Is it true? Can you know it to be true for sure? Who is it? Who are you when you think those thoughts, and who would you be without that belief? So for me, I really want to break out of my narratives that I've created by fear or anger or whatever my experiences have been. And then from a superficial point of view, I'll give you a superficial one. I have a woman named Dr. Tina Moore, Tina with a Y, who came to talk to me about GLP-1s. And I had a very strong opinion about Ozempic, because that's what's in Ozempic, right? Is something called a GLP-1.
Yeah, yeah.
And and I got educated in this way, and I just bring it up because it's so prevalent and what have you. Is really Ozempic is the delivery amount. Okay. But what's
Mm,
inside is something called the GLP-1, and if you
mhm,
genuinely microdose it, I'm talking like a 20th of what they give you for Ozempic,
mhm.
the restorative qualities for your organs, your heart are really, really profound. So I went in there like, this is bullshit and lazy, and the downstream effect of people taking these shortcuts is gonna be brutal on their health and blah, blah, blah. I had it all, because I know a
Oh, I would
little.
have totally I'd have been I mean, that's the way I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, that's so lame." Wow,
And
I'm so shocked at what you're telling
And
me.
but it's also it's sort of like everything, certain things a tiny bit, and I'm talking a tiny bit.
Mhm.
So it was sort of like not throwing the baby out with the bathwater on that, because Ozempic, obviously, I do think there's gonna be a lot of health issues with people who have, done this that were not grossly obese. I mean, I think there's a place for it if people are really obese, that's different. But the GLP-1 will be a very interesting thing, going forward in healthcare and people's wellness if it's done correctly. And it will be also interesting to see how, whether it's government or pharmaceutical companies will try to stop compounding pharmacies from making it available for sure. So those are the things from a
Wow.
deeper level and from a more kind of superficial level. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and if anyone's really experienced deep loss of a family or child, a partner, one of the books I read was called Finding the Words, and it was written by somebody who was in a terrible car accident and lost 2 of his children. And
Oh,
and
oh
so
my god, oh,
no, but I'm not bringing it up for that. I'm merely
no, but
saying
I mean, that was
it is one of
I
the most powerful and helpful books that you could read if you were going to support somebody going through something like that, or you yourself were going through something like that. So I think that one's important.
yeah, they were amazing. Was your inner world always as important to you as it is now? It feels like it's growing in importance. You've always been I don't know, I feel like, mind, body, and all that stuff, but um, m are you getting more towards that in a deeper way, in a more, I think you've always been into it. You're a very dedicated mom, and you're a very dedicated wife. You've worked so hard, with your family and your children, motherhood and everything else, but, from a more I don't know, spiritual, like, what would you call human design? Like, I was like, "Oh my god, she has someone from human design, that's so cool." I mean, that's just kinda I love it because 'cause I'm, like, an out there kind of person, but
I've always had uh, those things about my personality that seem the most obvious are really the secondary things about me. I think they've always been
Ooh.
that way. I think Uh, listen, when I was 14 or 15, I have a mentor who's 7 years older than me, still a friend of mine. I met him at 7. He gave me Atlas Shrugged, okay, whatever. But the point is he said to me, because I was really thought highly of myself and how smart I was, and he said to me, "Okay, Gabby, so you're really, really smart. Like, do me a favor. I want you to create a color, but close your eyes, create a color. Not you can't borrow any colors that you've seen already in nature. Nothing that exists. Go ahead." Okay, you can't do it. Your imagination doesn't do that. Okay, okay, we'll make it easier. Make an animal, create an animal. You can't use the paw or the fur or the shape of the snout, nothing of what you've already seen in nature. Make your own animal unique to your own imagination. And he's like, "Yeah, it's pretty hard, huh?" And you go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Wouldn't you be interested in knowing the mind of who could do that?" And so, whether we call it God or divine or whatever people feel comfortable doing, I remember it being very clear to me early in life that I'm pretty insignificant, and there's a lot of wonder and to know about the world. And if for some reason I was having these opportunities to be profoundly grateful, but also to be diligent, to be a to be a good steward of those opportunities, um, and um, and so it's always been important to me. I think people have it's easy, of course. I come from sports, so it seems like wow, everything's physical, but really the thing that drives the ship, it all is here and in here. And when you're pregnant, you go to the doctor, you check the heartbeat, the brain is nowhere around. So I'm always interested in what is that life force, what is that makes us, our spirit, our essence, what have you. So I certainly, maybe I've just had more opportunities to take a look at it.
Your inner world, this is also, yeah, I don't know if would be, I I bring these things up also because I do think if you look at you from the outside and maybe people aren't as familiar with your show or they haven't, listened to every episode like I have, they may not know that so many different topics are covered
Mhm.
that all relate to, like, being the best human that you can, living your best life or whatever, and it's so people think it's either this or that or whatever, and in this wellness, thing that we're in right now, it's, people are so serious about it, and it's so, like, it's either, you're going down this way or gut health or whatever, and you really are the person who brings it all together, so again, I thank you for what you do, and it's interesting to hear, about about what's important to you, with everything you learned. So, can you, what I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about you, not, just you and your daily jam, what's important to you, what things you practice and stuff like that. Um, what what's sort of your daily routine in terms of, like, what you eat and, well, your workouts?
I mean, listen, we've made it too complicated. What I do is not rocket science. It's about consistency. And I have a physical practice that's probably about 5, 6 days a week in the morning if I can do it before work. I'm pretty ruthless about that. That has been a real something I tether myself to. Um,
I have a question. Is that the workout that I got to do, or is that you just do that for friends? Is that different than the one that you normally do for yourself?
oh, that's a version of it, but I do that only a couple times a week. I do other things the other days of the week.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And then
Like, do you go in the pool on your own?
yeah, I do on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And then I practice eating real food. It's not, again, not complicated. I am diligent about my protein intake, but I'm not worried about how many grams per my body weight because that
Mhm.
doesn't seem realistic. I weigh 180 pounds. I'm probably not going to get 180 grams of protein in. You can only really absorb 35 or 40 grams per setting per meal. Um, I fail miserably at being hydrated, so I worry about the quality of my hydration. I do take supplements. Um, so I am almost anemic, have been my whole life, so I supplement with iron. I supplement with omegas, D3 and K2. I do take creatine. There's just a lot of data suggesting the positive, uh, just the outcome of taking creatine. If
Mhm.
people want to learn more, you can. I like Rhonda Patrick's work on that. Um, and then I go to bed pretty early, 9 o'clock, 9:30. And I think manage stress pretty well. I can deal with sort of many things happening at once without responding too much. I try to remind myself that I have chosen this and what's first things first, what needs to happen rather than just freaking out all at once. So what is the most important thing that I need to respond to and then try to deal with it that way. And I do my best. I fail to make sure to keep the relationships, the time with the relationships,
Mhm.
the relationship with myself, time for myself, for work, for all these things. I
Mhm.
try to keep that somewhat balanced. And
Mhm.
then I do sauna. and I haven't
Yeah, I was
said
gonna ask you, like,
yeah,
where's
go to
the
bed.
where's all that other stuff in your
When I can fit it
you
in,
know
I usually will do the sauna around the pool because 'cause I'm sweaty and gross already. Um,
Mhm,
and so I fit it in when I can. I miss the marks, and, I have a philosophy of head that way. So if people say, "I'm trying to be healthy, I'm trying to do all these things," great, just head that way. So every decision you make, all your thoughts, all the words you say, whatever you shove in your mouth, the moment to either get off the couch or do the exercise or not, just head that way. What's the direction you're trying to go? And so I live
that
by that.
way.
And I think a lot of people are worried about the bullseye, and I'm like, "You're not even near the target, so why are you worried about the bullseye? Just head that way." So in the moment that you have those decisions, where are you trying to go? And pick the choice that helps you go that way. And so I think we've made it overcomplicated, and, I'm very interested in, being a voice that is reminding people that it takes work and you can't
Mhm.
make excuses, but that you don't have to be perfect and, you have to build a practice.
Well, that's what really I mean, I think something in there and overall the text messages and voice notes, sunk into me, like, just head in that direction. I mean, I'm definitely gonna use that as, like, a catchphrase for me, but it was very much like, "Hey, just you're so chilled out, like, just go in that direction." So, I just wanted to point that out. I think it's, like, an amazing, um, philosophy. I know that it sounds like you're working on a project that is around practice. It's something, I don't know if you probably don't wanna talk about it, but I'm very interested in the idea of practice as well, and I think that is the missing piece that people are missing. They're looking for the magic bullet. They think you do it once and it cures everything, and it is about practice and repetition. Like, they think so it sounds like you're into that too. Is it more like about, um, everything? Is it more mental? Is it more physical? Is it more, what kind of things
Laird
do you think
Laird
people
often talks about, wellness or health, whatever word people use for it. It's like all the spokes on a tire, and it's sort of making sure all of them are working well so the tire spins effortlessly. And so it's not one thing, and it's do all the things all the time. And, people get caught up in trends and we could have the same conversation 30 years ago. We'd be talking about certain things, then we go through 17 trends, and then we'd be back to the same basic things because our biology is the same. So I always encourage people to get in touch with some things about their biology so they understand their behavior or thoughts or impulses better. Instead of thinking I'm bad or I'm weak, it's like, well, no, part of your biology is actually hardwired like this. You just need to set up guardrails so that you can be successful and, you know, go against the impulse of your biology in a time when, like, you would overeat or try to relax
Mm,
because we're built to, conserve energy. Or we're scared or anxious because we're meant to be a little bit aware to stay, survival, but it's like we're not under threat. So it's all those things. Um,
mhm, mhm.
you have to remember I I've you know, I've been in this version of this space for I don't know, 36 years. I was a college
Yeah.
athlete in 1987. And so I I believe that if you're really gonna do a good job, you make it as simple as possible. Every best coach I ever had or teacher or anybody, when people understand something, they know how to make it simple. If they are trying to make themselves needed or they're trying to sell you something, they'll make it complicated. But if you want me to tell you what to do, I definitely wouldn't be willing to do that because it's also each person's responsibility to figure out, well, what do I like to eat that maybe is healthy, or how would I like to move that would support me? Do I want to meditate? Do I want a breathing practice? Do I just want to be quiet in the car? Like, it's on people to decide how it's really going to work for them. Do they have a newborn? Have they started a new job? What are the million variables that make up your life? And how do you do that?
Well, I can't wait for whatever that is because it's like, I'll have what she's having. I can't think of a better teacher, a better motivator, a better conduit, than you to be able to like wrap it all up in a really chilled out, simple, easygoing way to just get people to just fucking do it. Like it's just do it. So I'm really excited for whatever that is. I hope
Oh,
I can't wait for it. I'd
well,
love
thank
to
you.
talk about it whenever it is because I think that's what people need. They're looking around
Yeah.
and it's like it's can be pretty simple. You just have to do it.
Yes, and when we forget too that ultimately if we're not connecting with one another, doesn't matter how perfect we eat or move. I think I know the connection part is so important. And listen, don't be confused. I might come across sort of mellow. I am super intense and super intense about my practice and about the way I live my life. It's just that I would rather be someone who encourages people, and I can tell you what I think and I can tell you some patterns I've seen, but I cannot tell you what to do.
Well, you can't listen, I know that you're no softie. When I worked out at your house, I was doing it was like a RDL or some version of that, and my back was not doing it, and you're like, "Tracy, like, you're tough." Yeah, and I was so bummed because I wasn't doing it right, and, like, everyone else knew what to do, so I know
Oh
how
gosh.
hardcore you wouldn't not be hardcore, you can't not be hardcore and be a professional athlete, but, no, I think that when I say that you're mellow, you're just very, you just talk like you have your shit together. It's not fake. That authenticity, that quiet, your composure, whatever. I mean, obviously, there's a lot that goes into you, but like you sound like butter when you're
So
in the podcast.
I was shooting a podcast today, and I had a guest who came from England. I mean, not for my show, but she was here shooting from England. She was here early, um, and I was trying to get Laird ready, set up in another room for he had a different interview, and then I needed help, and I almost killed my 17-year-old daughter. So I want to be clear. Um, I I fumble, I react, I feel pinched from time to time. So by no means do I have anything figured out, and I can get gotten all the time.
I loved when your tagline in the show before was like I'm just trying to figure it out. It was like, "We're all just figuring it out," or something. I think you've changed it since then. Wasn't it like sort of a catchphrase on the podcast? "We're all just figuring it
Oh, it's
out."
all an experiment.
It's all an experiment. Oh my god. I don't know if you use that anymore, but it's so good, and I think that that is the way you approach life, and I think that's gonna, just
Yeah.
what's gonna, keep all of us interested. And I'm just so happy that you're around. What about the book? What are you working on, and when is it coming out? Can we pre-order? Is it far away?
It's sometime
Or
next
do we talk about it now?
it gets handed in at the end of this year, and comes out next year. I mean, I'm working on it, and the woman I write with, this is our 3rd book together, and we have worked together. We're literally working together for 30 years.
Oh my god. What is your first and second book?
My
What
first
are
book
they?
was Big Girl in the Middle, and my second book was My Foot's Too Big for the Glass Slipper: A Guide to the Less Than Perfect Life.
Okay, I'm gonna have to read those both. And finally, you're like Tracy said finally 20 minutes ago, but something I've been meaning to talk about when hearing about you because you are an entrepreneur. You're so many different things, but on top of everything else, you're an entrepreneur. And I know you're a good business person. I've talked to you before about how you kind of like ran your business when you were a model and you were very involved in, your image. You gave me a story about on a shoot and you're like, "Listen, this is the way I'm gonna show up." I and this is all the kind of lead up to the Nike story, and I wanted to sort of like wrap it up by tying up your business acumen and everything that you've been to, because that was kind of a little pinnacle moment, maybe the beginning of like your or a stepping stone in your business. But can you tell us a little bit about the Nike shoe?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was really again, good
Just for a
timing.
second, like, it was a big deal, I mean,
Yeah,
I could say it's
I
like
would
you were the first woman who was able to design a Nike shoe. Did I get that right?
Yes, and I also was assigned Tinker Hatfield, who's one of the greatest, most prolific designers at Nike, and so it was very easy to collaborate, and I was, sort of the female division person, kinda opposite of, Bo Jackson was doing cross training and I was doing cross training, and so, another example of very good timing.
Yeah, that was a big deal, but you also probably had to be a big put your big girl panties on. Not you always seem to wearing your big girl panties, but you were very involved, and I mean, that would probably be a pretty easy situation for someone to take over and do something. I don't know. You had to really, like what was that like for you as a business person, as a person who's very in control of their image and doing that? Did they let you have free reign? Did you have to kinda really push for what you wanted?
Yes, and it's a collaboration, so I think they're and ultimately you have the same goal, which is to create something that people wanna wear and that works well. So I think in
Mhm.
that way, it's not hard. And at those days, Nike was with doing everything with Wyden and Kennedy, and they were so high level in their taste and the talent that they used to create images. So was pretty easy that part.
Who shot the did you were you in the campaign?
Oh, I've had, you know,
No, but on that shoe, on that particular shoe.
oh, yeah, we had a lot of different campaigns, because there was a few a few years of those shoes. I don't recall all the people who shop, but certainly, like,
Okay.
super high level talent. Yeah, yeah.
Well, and were they fashion and sports people?
We did both. I mean, Peggy Sirota shot my first poster, and what she didn't realize is that I had worked with her years earlier just as a model for, like, some
No.
kind of sunblock thing. Yeah, and then,
She didn't remember?
not really, and then I worked with her as so it was my poster, and she was shooting
Yeah.
for Nike, and I remember I worked with a photographer that I'd be surprised if you heard of, that I was a model running in the picture for Nike before I was a Nike athlete, a woman named Deborah Turbeville, who was very
Of
interesting.
course I know who she is. Oh my god.
So there
L
was a lot of interesting dancing. Mhm. I shot with Albert as a model, and then I shot with Albert as a professional athlete with Nike.
Oh my god, and Deborah Turbeville as I mean, I can't even talk about you've worked with so many, like, also these, like, super artistic people that people don't even understand now how artistic fashion photography used to be. Deborah Turbeville, Manuela Pavese,
Yeah.
um, I don't know who else Rico Pullman, I mean, it's just, like, legend. So,
Yeah.
well, Gabby, I guess we have to wrap it up. We've come full circle.
I'm gonna finish on this line, okay?
Do it. Oh my god, yeah, bring us out. Take us home.
I have a friend who passed away in his 80s, and he was one of the founders of Bally Fitness, and he made a decent amount of money. You know,
Ballet fitness.
yeah, and this is when Bally Fitness was Bally Fitness. Anyway, Mr. Wildman, and I was talking to a friend of mine today because I was saying that the residue, the way Don lived has really impacted Laird and I both. We were friends with him for over 20 years, and just the way he lived life and enjoyed it, his generosity, I don't know, all of it. And so my friend said, he took me heli snowboarding, very expensive, and
Yeah.
at this beautiful place, Mike Wiggly's in Canada, and he said, I was trying to thank Don. It's like, how could I thank them? Like, hey, this is like a trip of a lifetime, thank you. And Don did that so easy, was so generous. And he said to him, you know, I have more money than I do time. And I think we live in a way sometimes that time is the most important. So what the fuck are we all doing? And what are we waiting for?